Trump's pick to head up the Federal Communications Commission is the same guy who wrote the chapter on the FCC for Project 2025. Now, most of you know me on here for being a marketing critic. What you don't know is I started my academic career as a policy wonk, and in fact, my dissertation is about things related to the FCC. But for the purposes of this particular post, I want to talk about the structure of the broadcast television industry so you can understand what he can and cannot impact. And I'm sorry if I start sounding too much like a professor here, but this is what I've had to teach my students over the last couple of years, because while a while ago they didn't know what broadcast was, and I kind of understood that because broadcast got kind of wrapped up into cable. Now they're also, a lot of them, unclear about what cable is because they watch everything on streaming. I understand why. But if you want to understand how what happens there can get impacted, you need to understand the underlying television structures, which are what undergirds a lot of what we're talking about. So if you're talking about the broadcast networks, you're talking about things like ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. Not Fox News. Fox News is cable. Fox Broadcasting. And if you are of a particular generation, you remember that when we grew up, that's all we had. Cable didn't come into existence widely until the early 1980s. And so we would have the three broadcast networks, because Fox didn't come into existence until 1985. And then there were some local television stations. Now, the way that broadcasting works is that there's a central source, the network, and they provide programming to affiliates around the country, stations around the country. And what I mean by affiliate, a station in, say, Miami says, oh, I want to be affiliated with NBC. And so they sign a contract. And any programming that NBC provides as network programming, that affiliate then has to run. There's some exceptions, but by and large, they have to run that. So primarily what they run now is the morning show, so the Today Show and all of its spin-offs. If they have any, there used to be a lot of soap operas in the afternoon, but there aren't a lot of those. And then primarily the primetime programming, because that's where all the money is for them. And then the network at the local level decides what they will put on the air during those times when the network is not providing programming. So that could be news shows, that could be game shows, that could be talk shows, and a lot of those are syndicated. I'm going to leave that for another discussion if anybody wants to understand what those are. But if you're talking about how a network works, you have the network and then they have these stations all over the country. 200 markets. New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, Dallas, Miami, right? All over the country. But they don't own all of those stations. They have some stations that they owned, which are called owned and operated stations, but all of the rest of them are owned by other companies. And this is the key point to know. The stations that they own can cover up to 39% of the country. Can't do the rest of the country. So who owns that other 61%? The other 61% is owned by what are known as station groups. These are people like Hearst. These are people like Tribune. These are people like Sinclair. Now the name Sinclair may throw up some little signals for you because you may remember seeing this during the middle of COVID.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
And so what has basically happened is that the station group has become its own network, telling their newscasters what it is they have to say, very much working like a network at the station level. What Trump is talking about doing is eliminating station caps so that a company can own more than 39% of the country. The other thing to bear in mind is the FCC gives out TV station licenses. They don't control the network. This is really important. They don't control the network. They provide licenses to the local stations. So you might remember the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction. It wasn't the network that got called out for that. It was the local stations that got fined. Given all of this, I think one of two things will go on, or maybe they will both happen. One is that the station groups will get bigger and will start acting like Sinclair, so they become their own broadcast network. The other thing that could happen is that as these station groups become more powerful, right now, most of them own a mix. They may own a station by NBC or ABC or CBS or Fox, and they usually have a mix of those. But say that station caps get eliminated, then maybe they decide to buy up just a whole bunch of NBC stations. And then if they do that, they can put pressure on the network, even though the network is not overseen by the FCC. And having worked with affiliate marketing, I know how powerful those affiliates can be. The other question becomes, how many stations will one company be allowed to own in a single market? What has always been in place is that you can't own two broadcasters in the same market. You could own a broadcast network and a smaller station in a market, but you couldn't own two broadcasters. Are they going to eliminate that? And then if they eliminate that, they eliminate competition. But I'm also not convinced that that can happen so quickly. Most of the biggest stations are owned by the networks themselves. So they own the stations in New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, Philadelphia, right? The biggest stations in the country. And those are the most important ones. They're not going to be in a real rush to sell them off to station groups. I promise you.